Standing virtually alone and politically isolated, many around the world were shocked when the U.S., Canada, and Ukraine voted against the UN resolution proposed by Russia condemning Nazism. Is this an attempt to whitewash fascism or merely a desperate maneuver to protect the Kiev regime? I looked at the Canadian response, why they vetoed this, and they said it because of the political atmosphere and Samantha Power, the U.S. representative of the United Nations, about Ukraine. And I read the resolution very carefully. There is not one mention of Ukraine whatsoever. This is, again, just a political propaganda and out-and-out lying. Go ahead.
Well, with Canada, one thing you need to realize is that the current government, the current prime minister, is relying on Alberta to stay in power, as opposed to previous ministers who relied on Ontario. And Alberta, the biggest one of the most powerful political blocs in Alberta are the Ukrainian Nazis. Essentially, this is not necessarily driven by, as Ms. Power said, Ukrainian politics. It's driven by Canadian politics, which is even worse. If Ottawa was trying to back Kiev for some sort of principled reason, I would understand, wouldn't approve, but I would at least, show a modicum of understanding. But this is purely internal political posturing and internal political games. And here's Stephen Harper trying to play statesman and looking like a buffoon.
Well, he's very good at looking like a buffoon, unfortunately for himself and for the people of Canada.
So starting things off, the international embarrassment that is the Conservative government.
Yeah, they can't seem to go very long without shooting themselves in the foot.
And it wasn't even John Baird this time, or was it?
No, it wasn't his fault. It was, the fiscal, responsibility?
Responsibility? That's not a word that's synonymous with conservative, let me tell you. Okay, when it comes down to responsibility, we are talking about these things. We're starting to get things ready for the 2015 election and taking a look at a small incident that was mentioned in the news once or twice.
Yeah, apparently there was a gunman on Parliament Hill, but apparently there were some indications that a terror attack might be imminent in Canada. Of course, our security forces just ignored it.
Say it's not so.
It is so.
At least we have a clip.
Nobody stopped Michael Zahav-Bibeau as he murdered a soldier, ran onto Parliament Hill, and ended up very close to the Prime Minister with a rifle. But now CBC News has learned that all of this happened after a top-level terrorism alert telling officers to be ready for an attack.
The warning went out from the Privy Council office, the Prime Minister's department, where a top security official, Ewan Chan, sent this notice raising the threat level 5 days before the shooting. Dated October 17th, it tells security officers to maintain a heightened state of alertness because, it says, a violent act of terrorism could occur in Canada. It goes on to say there is no information indicating that an attack is imminent, but federal departments and agencies are asked to review security arrangements. Security experts say the warning should have caused a security crackdown. The alert did give specific directions to security teams in all federal buildings: ensure compliance with security protocols, control access points, update emergency contacts, and maintain heightened vigilance. But it's not clear that any of that happened when Zahav-Bibeau ran onto the hill, hijacked a car at gunpoint, and headed for the centre block. But it's even more startling that the security alert went out on October 17th and was proven right on the 20th by the hit-and-run attack in Quebec. A Canadian soldier was killed there too, and yet even 2 days after that, on the 22nd, the alert still didn't seem to have sunk in. Security around the Parliament buildings is the RCMP's job, but for some reason the minister in charge of the RCMP said no, it's the Speaker's job.
I don't comment on operational matter, and that the security of the Hill is the responsibility of the Speaker of the House.
Neither the minister nor his officials nor the RCMP would say what action, if any, was taken in response to the October 17th alert.
Okay, so taking the playbook out of the Republicans, is that
well,
right?
It's about putting money into the budget to make yourself look good,
all right,
while ignoring things that you shouldn't be doing. But at least we do have somebody who takes a look at the books every now and then.
Yes, the books. And the actual numbers that are coming out of the Conservatives are not adding up.
Well, apparently they're spending money on veterans, or maybe not.
Not? Well,
not according to the AG.
Check this one.
2 weeks after our country honored the men and women who have fought for Canada, the Auditor General's report shows once they get home, we aren't taking care of our veterans in a timely manner. Michael Ferguson says once they return from war, these men and women are confronted with tons of red tape and complex processes in order to get the services they need. The audit also found almost a quarter of the vets who applied for mental health benefits between 2006 and 2014 were denied. In some cases, they wait for up to 8 months just to find out if they're eligible for mental health disability benefits.
Preparing the application form is complex. The Department of Veterans Affairs has to get the military records and the medical records of the veterans from National Defense, and that can take 4 months on its own.
This audit comes just days after the government announced $200 million over 6 years to improve mental health services for veterans. And the defense minister preferred to focus on the positive aspects of this report.
They have made considerable progress in this area. I mean, the wait time had been 18 months. Now it's 4 months to move those documents over from somebody leaving the Department of National Defense to Veterans Affairs.
Opposition parties disagree, saying the government isn't taking proper care of our men and women after they've risked their lives for our country. Michael Couture, Global News, Ottawa.
So as soon as this report comes out, I'm laughing because it's like they think we're not going to find out.
Yeah, you know, you would think that maybe they might try to cover their butts at least.
The Conservative base apparently does not have access to the internet. The Conservatives themselves, the federal party, are relying on the fact that they can keep their own viewers in the dark, but of course it's not working.
Of course, the Ministry of Veterans Affairs did step up and announce a huge program for mental health for veterans. However, they may have misstated some of the truth in that.
So,
check it out.
Thank you, Peter.
With its reputation among some veterans in tatters, the government less than a week ago announced $200 million in mental health funding.
We believe the new clinic will help.
The press release was explicit, $200 million over 6 years, except it's not. Now the government is admitting the money will be spread over half a century.
Can you explain that?
The government has to commit the funding to meet the needs on an accrual basis, but you have to commit it up front.
So was that made clear, though, initially?
I think we should be a little more clear.
Critics say it's more than a lack of clarity.
Why are Conservatives trying to paper over their failure to support our veterans rather than fixing the problems?
Yeah. Most of the money will go towards operational stress injury clinics, one in Halifax and 7 satellites. A $19 million investment initially, and the remaining $140 million over the life of the program. With veterans who served in Afghanistan in their 20s, that could be 50 years. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Stéphane Grenier worked in mental health for the Department of Defense for more than a decade. He says he'll be watching how the money is spent.
Is it only going to be a little trickle here and there, or is it going to be transformational? And I don't see as it being transformational.
This veterans controversy is just the latest for the government. Earlier this week, an Auditor General's report showed 1 in 5 veterans waits more than 8 months for access to mental health services. And before that, it was revealed more than $1 billion of the Veterans Affairs budget went unspent.
Earlier this year, the closure of 8 Veterans Affairs offices and an ensuing dust-up with Minister of Veterans Affairs Julian Fantino.
We had a lot more before.
The government insists a silent majority of veterans is supportive. After this latest controversy, not everyone is convinced.
Start with an apology to our veterans.
Vash Capellos, Global News, Ottawa.
Okay, so if you want real input here, SHD, shitharperdid.com, is a place that you can go and look these things up. You've got the Council for Policy Alternatives, all kinds of accounting happening there.
And Operation Maple has some scathing things to say about the Harper government as well.
So we are urging you to start informing your local Conservatives of the fact that nobody should be voting for the Conservative Party, and you should start doing your research without blindly casting your vote to something you traditionally voted for.
Of course, one of the things the Conservative Party tries to do is discredit the other political parties.
Yes, we have all of this hate mail. Wait a second, no, hate ads, okay? We're getting spammed with them right now. Back east, they're just on every newspaper. They're in every TV. Thank goodness I don't watch commercials.
But every once in a while they try something, and it tends to have less than beneficial results.
And exactly where this source came from?
Oh, who knows?
It was a cloak and dagger political sting launched by this young Conservative that has backfired. The target was Marlo Reynolds, a Liberal candidate in Alberta. He was at a meeting in Canmore earlier this month when a young woman began speaking to him about the Conservatives' income-splitting plan, secretly recording their conversation. And she thought she had pay dirt, claiming Reynolds told her the tax break would give couples with children money for arguably nothing, and they'd blow it on TVs and cars.
Handing people money, for arguably nothing.
Comments that fueled the Conservative attack machine. The only problem, Reynolds didn't say this. Turns out it was someone else, a man who voted Conservative in the last election.
And I heard my voice in the piece and was a bit astounded. Showed it to a number of my friends. They immediately laughed and confirmed that it was me. And I, again, distinctly remember saying it.
For Marlo Reynolds, it was a quick introduction to how the Conservatives play politics.
I'm trying to run a campaign that's really attacking the issues, and here we have people that are trying to attack other people. And we're just not going to get to good solutions if we don't show some common courtesy in politics.
The Tories have launched similar stings against retired military general Andrew Leslie and Liberal MP John McKay, who was caught by a hidden recorder talking about what he called Justin Trudeau's bozo eruption.
Instead of waiting for somebody to make a gaffe and then pounce on it, we're going out of our way now to engineer gaffes.
For their part, the Conservatives are not backing down, telling Global News the person who recorded the conversation still insists Reynolds is the one who made these comments.
So, while the attack ads jump on the newspapers and the radio, we're tuning them out, and I think we should boycott any newspaper, any TV that runs attack ads.
Yeah, because, they really aren't helping, and it is your tax dollars being spent.
But, of course, when they have sources like the one we just saw...
Well, maybe they should take another look at their methods and methodology.
I'm Darren Howard.
I'm Robert Nisbet.
We're just trashing on the Conservative fails right now. We've got an entire another segment coming up.
Check it out and like us and share us on Facebook.
Yes, it helps out a lot. We'll be right back.
Within days of the Ottawa shooting, Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird met with his staff here at his department. CBC News has learned that Baird asked for an expedited list of security priorities at Canadian foreign missions around the world. But over the past 3 years, the government has not spent all the money it has labeled for strengthening security at missions abroad. Public accounts numbers released last week show that the government has in fact consistently underspent by as much as 60%. This year, spending just $69 million of an allocated budget of $129. The government's own numbers show unspent money has repeatedly been used in other departments as a way to pay down the federal deficit.
I do hope that this striving for a balanced budget is not endangering the security of our people working abroad.
This is money on top of the overall operating budgets for missions, capital spending meant to beef up security infrastructure in and around embassies and high commissions. As the former head of Canada's Special Forces, Steve Day, says it's often difficult to make decisions on how money should be spent from far away, but
we have not correctly prioritized the threats and hazards and risks and then taken that finite amount of resources the Government of Canada has and allocated it to the priority areas.
Former Ambassador Jeremy Kinsman says it is clear all the money available should be spent.
I think that this has really become urgent fairly recently. I don't want to criticize them, but it does seem as if it's a management issue.
In a statement tonight, a spokesperson for the Department of Foreign Affairs says that we take safety and security of missions abroad very seriously and continuously review risk. As for that unspent money, all $144 million worth, the department says that it is broadly meant for long-term projects, which the department says it continues to explore.